program is part of the Scene Project's podcast network. The Scene Project features interviews with independent musicians, comedians, and artists from across the Midwest. Become part of our community and support local art wherever you are. Well, welcome into another exciting episode of The Scene. I am your host, Bubba Startz, and with me today is marketing coach and actor Kyle Asperger. Welcome to the show.
Bubba, thanks for having me, brother. Appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I hope neither one of us blow away. The winds outside in both areas that we are in are howling, so if you hear something in the background, it's not a ghost, it's just the wind today.
Could be the last time you see either of us, so let's make it a good one.
Yeah, you never know, right? Well, before we get too far into everything that we're up to, I just kind of want to give you the floor and let you give us a little bit of your backstory.
I appreciate it, man. I'm originally from Chicago. I was adopted, grew up in the southwestern general burbs, LaGrange, if anybody's actually listening and is familiar with that area. Lived in Columbus, Ohio for about 7 years, and now beautiful, gusty Denver, Colorado. And so I have a marketing background. I was an agency owner for nearly a decade, spun up a coaching practice, and probably the worst time to become a coach and or do anything further with marketing because AI is stealing everything. And so then I figured, you know what, I might as well just escape and, I don't know, try to play other people and whatnot. And so that's where I've kind of spooled up an acting career too. So that seems to be one of the biggest focuses. And, these days I'm just a dude that rises to whatever the occasion is. We'll say that.
You're going to laugh. My family actually founded the town of Romeoville.
Wow. Wow.
The Startzes have deep roots. So I grew up in Crest Hill. I know the southwest suburbs of Chicago area very well. Still have family out in Oswego and some on the south side of the city.
Man,
but yeah.
Did not know I was speaking with royalty here.
Well, they were all moonshiners and working a still for Capone back in the day. But
dude, that's awesome. That's so.
I have pictures of I guess it would be like my great uncle with Babyface Nelson at the Romeo train station.
Dude, that paints such a picture. That's amazing.
Yeah, well, and we talked a little bit about my little inside baseball on me, Kyle. I did a couple years in prison for selling marijuana, and we were talking about my history with the city of Denver being somewhere where I frequented for reasons in that. But we're not here to talk about me and my history, but I love the overlap and how you're like, nobody's ever going to know where this is, and it's like, actually,
yeah, oops,
pretty intimately.
That's fabulous. I love
Very
it.
cool, man. Well, yeah, and I want to disagree with you that I know AI is taking over the marketing side of things. We use it a lot with our design elements and things that we do, but it takes a special person and someone with that knowledge to really make it hit home. And I think the more that we use these AI products for a lot of the design elements, that it's actually causing a rift between what is marketing at its heart, and that's a human connection. So can you talk about your history in marketing and what it really means at the heart of marketing? What it means to have that connection to sell to another human being.
Well, the concept of selling is kind of what I think dampens the overall reputation of marketing, because the root core of majority conversation that I've had, through that decade of experience and, delivering essentially the product that is, all right, marketing services rendered. So majority people would come, and the root disconnect that, Bubba, I think that you're hinting at, that you already outright said, was communication. And this is a human to human thing, even if it's business to business, regardless of B2B, B2C. It's still human on the receiving end. And the disconnect simply being that, all right, these business entities or individuals were having problems with figuring out how to best communicate to whatever that audience is that they were aiming for. Because that audience, if they're experts in some manner, then they're going to want to see certain verbiage that says, okay, well, we cater to the expert. If they are simply looking for a product, or maybe don't even know that there is a problem that they have that your product is solving for, then you need to be able to communicate that in a way that they will digest it. And there's no one singular answer, because all kinds of different people, we have a gazillion different platforms these days and all kinds of marketing tactics. So it's like the root is human to human. So I'm happy that you disagree. A lot of the AI, undertone, the connotation that I'm sort of suggesting is there is so much within the world of marketing that is automated now, that's done with just AI and all that stuff. A lot of like what was previously really enjoyable has kind of been taken over. But I am kind of interested, because if we get to this weird dystopic future where like AI takes over everything, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if we go back to a barter system. I don't know if all of a sudden humans are like, I really do miss being sold to by other humans as opposed to robots pretending to be humans. So I don't know if there's going to be this like backlash, or just like a, slap across the face, like reminder of like, we all used to do this thing called humanity or whatever. Like, why not go back to it? Even though we fail, even though we're far less efficient, I don't know. I feel like there will be like a human uprising at some point.
I think there has to be, right? In some ways. And, I come from the music world. I'm a songwriter, and most of our show is focused on independent songwriters. I've expanded that to creators, other podcasters or actors or comedians or whatever, just because I'm interested in conversations with humans, right? And creative humans at that. And what could be more creative than learning how to communicate a vision or a product or a service to another human being. And I've always considered myself a bit of a marketer, because I've always been marketing a service that really nobody needs, right? I've been selling my music, and what's so good about my music compared to someone else's music, right? And now in the podcasting world, much of the same. We have services that we offer to other creators as well, who, and they're all at a very low price point, because we understand the afflictions of the creator. And especially in a world that in an industry, especially, that has completely sucked the living out of this industry. The industry has cannibalized itself to the point of now you have AI artists that are topping the Billboard charts, to the point that now YouTube is separating from the Billboard charts and no longer sending them data. And iHeart is getting swallowed up by Netflix and all of these. So the entire industry right now is just eating itself, because there's no one left to eat. You have devalued the individual creator to the point that we are all out here going, how the hell are we going to make a living doing the thing that we love, but still living in a world that needs our creative input? And that, to me, is what I think we're at a tipping point now, that the creators are going to become valuable again, and even more valuable than they were before, for that exact reason. And we are one EMP away from the whole thing going tits up anyway. So let's just be honest, right?
I hope that's the case, because I have been like the world of creative. My degree is in graphic design. I'm no different. I'm musically challenged in every sense of the word, so I'm not claiming that by any means. But creativity, the arts, theater, that film, all that good stuff. Like, that's where I, grew up. That was my training ground. And you're smack dab on the money. The biggest are eating everybody. It's the competition. If you can't beat them, buy them. Just suck them in. But that does leave the little guy or girl or thing, depending on whatever you want to be. And I think if we can, I do believe that, weirdly enough, this whole AI push, this let's remove the humanity, the moment that you start saying no to something, that's when people will say yes. And I don't know when it'll happen, if it does, how or what, but we can all just kind of stay tuned and wait and see.
Well, and it may be that, something you mentioned, do we all go back to the barter system? Maybe it's just a point where all of the creatives band together on our own and say, look, we're just going to create for ourselves and for the people truly. And the industries and the powers that be can have that. And we're going to find way to build our own communities and to make a way, to forge a path. And so much of that mentality is what I've brought to this podcast, and that we're not trying to work with the upper echelon of artists and using somebody else's name to make us big. In fact, we're reaching down in many ways to artists that are just starting out, or to people that don't have a following at all, or very small following similar to ourselves. And even though I have a title with the Content Creator of the Year, that I'm not seeking that title and using that to forge a path upwards. I'm using it to build a platform in which to pull all of the people below me up onto, so that we can build something greater. So maybe it's guys like us getting together, Kyle, putting our heads together to find a way to use our powers in unison to build something better that makes more sense for the future of humanity, and not trying to necessarily make what is out here now work. I think the only way forward at this point is with an entire new paradigm, and not trying to make something that is crippling and really on its last legs work. The music industry, in a lot of cases, the film industry, are completely dead. They are devoid of a lot of the talent that has gone there, because it continues to cannibalize itself. And it's unfortunate, but the age of the independent creator is upon us. And it's, how do we build platforms together to use those to promote each other and our things? And I think you're seeing that with the advent of the fast streaming networks. And I mean, really anyone with enough money can build their own channel and get it onto Roku and Apple TV things. It's how do we band together to make those channels work, instead of worrying? I mean, I was going to say use MTV as you could tell how old I am, right? Where, like, to me, that was still the upper echelon of it, but there just isn't those things anymore.
Back in the day, though, I'm 33. I'm not trying to age anybody here.
Yeah, and I'm 39, so still in my late 30s now. But
we're both millennials, and so like MTV held more of a station in our lives, because like back, I'd say like I don't remember when MTV got to the new age, but like they used to feature real music. And the true, like, because, all right, I think about my dad, who's a jazzophile to the core. Like, the sleepiest stuff is just like, he's just jamming out, and everybody else is like, oh, he's still going. Okay. All right. So he's teetering on 70, slightly older than both of us here. And this is to say, like, all right, I was in New York with him, and we're talking about music, and I couldn't explain to him, not that I even tried, because I simply didn't know. It's just, we have this individualized sort of approach, which is, I think, the whole of what you and I are touching on here, Bubba. It's like, we have these platforms that glorify the individual creator, and so we can build these hyper niche followings. We can, some of us, build broader followings if we want, or are able to. I don't know. But because of that, the reflection here is that, like, music from my dad's era, that was music with a capital M. That changed lives. That moved cultures in certain directions. And the music nowadays does not. I'm not a huge music head, but that's the one thing I know, is that we are not putting out music the same way. It is not affecting society the same way it used to. And I think it's in part because the way that people had to digest like music back then, if I'm over intellectualizing, it's like, all right, they'd have to go to a concert or go to a bar where they would be spinning these different records, where as a whole, the music needs to be heard, digested, absorbed, and there becomes this whole kind of like group think. Inevitably, if everybody's on the same page, at least, there's just less of that. It's more of an individual experience these days. So musicians are maybe putting out extraordinary stuff, but because it's such an individualist listening experience, there isn't this like collective whole, unless you go to a concert or something like that, or a music festival, whatever. So I don't know if there's even really much of a message. It's just to say that the interconnectivity has changed a lot of how we digest material.
Yeah, I mean, my first real concrete music memories are like the grunge era. And really at the tail end of the grunge era, right? When the Chili Peppers were really starting to get big. I mean, my first real vivid music memory, besides being, 3 or 4 years old at a Grateful Dead concert. My parents were kind of hippies, late generation hippies, right? They're Gen Xers, but
Yeah.
Was hearing Under the Bridge for the first time on the radio. And that first guitar lick hitting, and I get goosebumps every time that I think about it. But I can remember the rain falling on our Ford Aerostar and being on the way to the river and the Des Plaines River, right? Going down to see my grandpa who had a boat down there. This was still when we lived in the area before we moved to South Dakota. And you don't have that anymore because you don't have these, radio. And I know that radio is still big and it's still the main way that a lot of people, but it's also owned by conglomerates now, right? Whether it is, iHeartRadio or it's one of the other ones, and the name's evading me right now. It doesn't matter. Eventually it's all going to be one company, right? It's only a matter of time before it all gets swallowed up and it's all just the same thing. And you don't necessarily have DJs anymore. Most of that is automated these days. You don't have any personalities. And I think this kind of ties back to the marketing things that we're talking about as well, is that because everyone is using the same AI, everyone's marketing ends up looking exactly the same as well, right? I see the same flyer now 400 times as I'm scrolling. Well, most of the people that I follow online are independent artists, as you could imagine. Yeah. And I'm just seeing them all using essentially the same flyer. And a lot of them don't know it because we're all stuck inside of such a small bubble that we've created for ourselves that there's very few people like me that are reaching out. I've interviewed over 500 artists in the last year. I'm out there. I'm working a little bit in Nashville now and around in other areas where I'm actually connecting with a lot of those people and doing everything that I can to try and bring that out and give them the exposure to another crowd. But nobody's watching me, right? Like, who am I? I'm not Bobby Bones. And if you listen to the Bobby Bones show now, which is played on probably 1,000 stations coast to coast, it's the same 20 songs now with maybe a few additions that it was before, because now Billboard is legacy, to where the same songs can sit on there for years. It's not a hot rotation of these things. So the upper echelon of artists just sit there in place until they release a new song. So you're not getting a refresh on there. I heard someone on Instagram yesterday, Demizzo, who I follow regularly now because that's kind of where I'm getting my music industry news. And it used to be that the Billboard charts were like a ride at the amusement park, right? It was like getting on a roller coaster, that everybody was in line and eventually you would kind of get your turn in line and everyone may get a chance to be up at the top and it would rotate. Now it's just the same VIPs on rotation in that world. And I think it's kind of been that way for a few years, and, God bless the Luke Combs and the Taylor Swifts of the world that are able to go out there and they can sell out stadiums, but that's a small handful of people, and we're not getting a rotating cast of characters up there any longer. And it's leaving a lot of people out in the cold that had, maybe a little bit delusional dreams, right, of being a rock star. But there still should be room for people to carve out a living, whether that's in the music or the marketing fields. And the only way I think we get there is if we band together. And it's why we have an academy at the Scene Projects that is a group, and not just one coach, but of many coaches. And maybe one day we'll add a marketing coach to that as well. And to have people, because that's one thing that especially artists really need help with that gets underserved. They're so busy creating that a lot of them forget that, well, you also need to know how to bring yourself to the market with marketing to be able to have someone that may one day pay you for your services.
Mm-hmm. I agree, man. We all, like, for the small fish, I'll think about it like this. It's an interesting metaphor. I went scuba diving in Costa Rica some number of years back. I think back in like 2021. On the whole, saw, a huge amount of like biodiversity, floating around. But the most stunning thing, it was a school of fish that I was surrounded 360 degrees by. They were like gray fish. The fish themselves weren't terribly interesting. But when you think about it from the holistic perspective, being completely surrounded by them, easily one of the most impactful experiences in my life. So that is just to say the power of the whole shan't be discredited, even when it comes down to the literal small fish.
Well, and I think because you are no longer an observer of that, but you were immersed in the experience, you were fully surrounded by it visually. And if you could hear them, hearing that auditory of all these fish swimming in unison and all together solo at the same time, right? Each moving as an individual, but part of something much greater. I think that's exactly what we're talking about and what I'm striving to create. Kyle, I think you just kind of nailed it, and you were able to bring out a visual, and that's where a really good marketer can do a great job doing something that an auditory person like me who can create music and write songs, but God, I would screw up a stick figure, Kyle.
Hey, no judgment. It took me years to get my mom to just a reasonable stick figure level, so I stopped all of those classes a long time ago. I'll put it like that. That said, I don't think anybody's getting by drawing stick figures unless they're like the animations where they're like beating the crap out of each other. Maybe there's a market there. But the honest answer, I got away from drawing. I just decided, you know what? I like pretending I'm other people. What am I doing? I'm playing pretend. It's nothing different that I wasn't doing as a kid. So I'm a huge, huge supporter of innovation. But in these weird times where all folks are inevitably going through, all right, we're getting job loss left and right. And I'm not saying anything yay or nay. But in this time where a lot of people are having to reassess what they're doing, where their passions lie, whether or not to even endure the path of following one's passion, sometimes you don't need to think as hard. As I guess the root of my message is, whatever it is that feeds the child in you, your soul, call it what you want, sometimes that's a great avenue. Just go explore it.
I think that's a great message to leave off with. Kyle, where can people find you online and or in person if you got any acting gigs coming up?
Acting gigs, well, they take me all kinds of random places, so I would not suggest trying to find me on set. If you do, I might call the cops on you because that's kind of disturbing. Please don't do that. I say that with love and respect, but also, don't stalk people. Stalk me online. Go, Kyle Asperger 301. Follow me on Facebook. Anything like that. Anarchy for a Day is the marketing coaching practice. That's FOR a day. Let's keep the conversation going. If you want to reach out, drop me a line. Give me something that I can actually respond to. Don't hit me with just like a hi. I'm not going to do anything with that.
Awesome, Kyle. Well, yeah, hang out with me because I'd like to keep this conversation going as well. But we're going to say goodbye to the audience. Thank you so much for giving me a little bit of your time today. And thank you for being part of the scene.
It was a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.